Talk to me. Give me the money.
I let you in. Please give me the money that comes with the money.
I let you in. Please respond.
I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe. and we're the Ghouls next door. Talk about spooky stuff.
As we have been known to do. We're almost at 300 episodes, which is straight up bonkers.
It is, yes. This is, 281.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. I hope you all are enjoying it. Listeners and viewers, I hope you're enjoying this.
Our faces.
Yeah, we are the media literacy show from Horror Lens. We explore the real life, historical, psychological inspirations behind our cinematic fears. And this is our Teenager Scare the Living Shit Out of Me series, where we're talking about horror and youth and what is plaguing the children, what is scary for them. And today we're talking about Talk to Me, which is a film that I have been trying to get us to talk about since it came out.
Yeah.
Since it came out, I was like, please give me this film.
With good reason. It's a good movie. I talk about why it stressed me out, but it's a good movie. It does a good job. And it's like unique and stressful and like very well shot. It has a lot of good things going on. And it does fit the Ghouls MO. Absolutely. Because it's about like, it's saying more than it's saying, you know?
Yeah. And even still, it's just like on a horror level is a brilliant horror film.
Yeah.
I think. And yeah, as soon as I saw it, I'll talk about it in my section too, just about like the impact of it, but immediately I was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is, we have to do this. And so I've been trying to do it in different ways, and it was hard to figure out like what the theme would be and how we would kind of adapt it from that. And that was a problem, was I couldn't like narrow it down. But talking about like young people and the horrors that they're experiencing, that's where I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's what's it called? The key.
Yes. Yeah, there's a key theme, and so this one is horrifying in a lot of ways. It feels really real, and just like, if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. There is like some caution that I bring to that when I do, but it is one of my favorite movies. I'd have to say, like, a horror movies, it's definitely in my category as one of the top, and I am really appreciative of it. I think it's exciting. I think it's also, it's different. And that's where I'm like, thank God. Like, it's so hard to find different or new. Like, I'm tired of seeing the same things. And for it to take a typical, or not typical, but like a theme, like possession or supernatural horror that has been done ad nauseum forever in horror, and to make something that is truly its own thing and unique, and also still saying things and expressing like the pains and horrors of the time. Like, I think it did all that brilliantly.
Yeah, no, it does a really good job. And as you said, like, there's so many remakes of a million things, and this is very much not like they did it in such a unique way. So absolutely, it does a fantastic job. It's just a lot. It's like emotional and heavy, and it is not bodies. Bodies was haha. There was a very limited haha that took place during this film. It was a lot, but like so good, just like a lot. Yeah.
So you got to really be in a different mindset with it, and I think that's you have to come in serious. And there are funny moments, and there's thrilling moments, and there's some of the best cinematography. Like, there's parts of it that live rent free in my head forever, and for good reason. You know, and I think it's really exciting that these brothers who were just YouTubers making funny videos with, like, you know, Master Chief and Goku and their silly YouTube videos to evolve into something like this, and to also just be really appreciative of the team that was a part of it. I find it inspiring.
Yeah, as we have made many YouTube films that are funny, and we've made lots of YouTube videos. We would love the opportunity. Gabe specifically needs the opportunity to make big film. You
Give
know,
me an opportunity. Hire me.
This
Give
is
me
manifesting. Money. This is it. It's happening right now.
It's gonna happen.
Give us a demon hand, and we'll shake it, and then we'll have jobs.
Talk to me. Talk to me. Give me the money.
I let you in. Please give me the money that comes with the money.
I let you in. Please respond.
Yeah. That was great.
It'd be like the different angle instead of like up when.
Yeah.
It just is like a FYI for people who are watching us. I don't look like this because I'm sickly. Okay.
Yeah.
I am portraying them when they are possessed, and they look terrible because they are pretty terrible. There's a lot of bad stuff happening inside their bodies. So that's why I look like this. I'm not like just having the worst day.
Gabe did not get in a bad fight.
I am not. I do not have the plague, I promise.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's hop in and let me tell you about Talk to Me. So Talk to Me is from 2022 or 2023. I'll have to look that up because it said 2022, but I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure I watched it last year.
Yeah.
And I watched it in theaters. So we'll see. So I'm going to say 2023. Someone could correct me on that. But it is about when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. It's directed by brother team Danny and Michael Filippo. Who are, like I said, Australian YouTubers who did a lot of really fun videos. And then they made this, which is quite serious and quite amazing. It's an A24 film. And I don't always love those, but this is, you got me. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Comedy lends to horror, man.
They're so good at it. It's again, please hire me. But this film is yeah, let me tell you why you should appreciate it. And maybe it's something that you haven't heard before. I've heard a few people talk. There's like some obvious things that are a part of the film that people can get. But I think there are some other things that I really appreciate. And whenever I'm like watching something and I'm like, why are people not talking about this aspect? Like it just makes me want to express it even more. So I do hope, maybe it enlightens you and shows you something cool and new. So Talk to Me is a supernatural psychological horror film, and it is a gut-wrenching emotional film that explores the horrors of a teenage life for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Is the younger kid? I'm pretty sure it's Gen Alpha. Yeah. Unlike Bodies, which focus on the performative nature of the young adults whose entire lives have been perpetually virtual, Talk to Me shifts focus from a tongue-in-cheek tease to a deep depressive wound. Yeah. Like Kat said, Bodies is a fun time. It is silly. It's goofy. Let's watch it together and laugh. Talk to Me is not that. No. It is a gruesome, truly gruesome, like that is the best word to say. It's a gruesome film that reveals a fragility in these teens that rely on found family, social currency, and the next fix, which can take any number of, forms. And in this case is spiritual possession. Yeah. Or is it?
That's the real question.
Is this real question? Is it her mom? Is it not her mom?
Is it depression? I don't know.
What is it? Yeah. Who knows? The film follows Mia, who is a teenager struggling with the recent death of her mother and the strained relationship with her father following that death, which is really one of the saddest parts of the film. Yeah. Mia is spending a lot of her time, most of it, with a friend Jade and her family, including her younger brother Riley. And I will say Jade is loosely a friend. Because what kind of friend doesn't know that it's the anniversary of your mom's passing? That's crazy.
That's like a big deal.
Like Jade's mom knew. Like Jade's mom knew and was gonna come. Like that's so. Like I get it. And like high school, like friendships are flippant. But that made me really sad. Like Mia is very alone always. Mm-hmm. And Mia has become fascinated by group chat videos of teens getting possessed at parties on this anniversary of her mother's death where she's seeking an escape. And so she sees these videos and it looks like a lot of fun. Despite Jade's skepticism, Mia really wants to try it out. Again, she needs this escape. And so during a late night gathering with friends, they discover the possessions are indeed real. And they use a ceramic hand with a mystical connection to the afterlife, which is, they said that it's an involved hand of like a psychic or something, and
Sure.
cut it off, whatever. It doesn't even need to be anything. It's just, but it's something.
Yeah.
And so they follow a ritual where they light a candle. They hold the hands. They're also strapped in. It's important. They're like tied up. And they say, "Talk to me." And then they see the corpse. They see the spirit, the person. And then they say, "I let you in." And that allows the ghost to possess them for up to 90 seconds. And staying longer will increase the spirit's desire to remain and cause all kinds of issues. Like you cannot go over the 90 seconds. And it's like, I was saying this to Kat, like if this occurred, if this was a possibility and I was at this party and I held this hand, because I think I would get as far as holding the hands and saying, "Talk to me." And the second I saw the ghost, like as second I see the spirit, I'd be like, "Nope, okay. Confirmed I saw it."
Yeah.
I'm not good, bud. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't need to be
I'm
in
letting
here.
you in? Excuse me. No, not. I barely have enough hands off of my body as it is. Like, in our current climate, I do not need spiritual ones in there too. No,
absolutely.
thank you.
Like, also, just like some of the ghosts, like similarly, we're just like, "Wow, you saw that one," and you weren't like, "Okay, let's do it again."
Yeah, can I pick a different ghost?
They look like they had a really bad time. They had a bad death. I don't want to experience what that feels like. Let's do somebody who looks like they went peacefully in their sleep.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't want that in me. And it's like, some of them are really scary. And you see that and you're like, okay, sure, yeah, come on in. And yeah, it is really jarring. It's also I really appreciate that, like, the way that the ghosts have died, you can tell there's like clearly like their bodies are in certain conditions, but also there's motifs. Like in the case of Mia's spirit that's following her, it's always water. You always hear water because the spirit presumably drowned.
Yeah.
So the group eagerly tries it out, becoming hooked on the intense and thrilling experiences it provides, because it does something to them. Because despite the horrible things that they wake up to learning that they've done or said or experienced, or caught on camera, they want to do it again. So something's going on there. So the problem is that when Mia uses the hand, she goes too long. She's unable to break it. The spirit was too feisty. And so she inadvertently opens up a door to the spirit world, inviting malevolent forces into her life under the guise of her lost mother. So she's an easy target because there's specific person who is on the other side that she would want connection to. And so they prey on that, and it leads her to some terrible things. So as supernatural occurrences escalate, Mia must confront her own grief and the horrifying consequences of meddling with the supernatural. Or maybe it's a lot of other things. Yeah. Because that's what horror media is. That's what media is. I just want everyone to understand that. Media literacy is so important. And there's just so very much that I appreciate about this film. And as I was saying, after I watched it for the first time with Jeff, a good friend that we talk about often, I ran home and begged my two favorite people to watch it, which is Kat and Mike. And I sat them down and I forced them to watch it. I was like, you have to do it. Yeah. And I'm making you.
Specifically, we're like, I need to watch you watch this film.
I was like, I need to experience it with you so I know that I'm not wrong. And I know I'm not wrong because this is one of those films. Yeah, I did the same thing with Skinamarink. I sat you all down and made you watch Skinamarink and Barbarian.
Barbarian, absolutely. Yeah, no, honestly, every time you do it, I'm like, I know I'm in for like a good time. Probably like a stressful time because I'm a little baby. But like a good time, it's always, you're not wrong. I don't think you've ever been wrong about a film thus far.
Thank you.
So
I will say this one was when I was watching you all watch it, right? So it was in the second viewing that I became aware of the intensity of the film. I think when I was watching it, it was rough for me, but I was just so intertwined with the story and what was happening, and I was just geeking out. And it's also like just whenever I watch a film with Jeff, that's why I bring you all into it, because like Jeff and I will just like, we're in a different world when we're watching horror. And so sometimes I don't realize that it has a different intensity or different like feeling, or that it could be triggering to some folks. So now when I still strongly recommend the film, I highly, highly recommend the film. I do always emphasize how gruesome it can be. It is not for the faint of heart. It is super gory, and not in a way that's like over dramatic and like silly, like Evil Dead level. It is realistic, and it's overdone, but not in a way that you're like, this is, for nothing. It's definitely there for a good reason, but it still hurts to watch. It hurts it hurts a lot. It does not have a happy ending. And I do think that like if it is a film that you're interested in, you have not seen it, always check trigger warnings with horror movies in general, but definitely this one. So that is your warning for this episode. If you haven't watched the film, you should, but understand your limits, and it's totally okay to close your eyes.
Or like just take a minute.
Like it's okay. Like I think that's just as valid of an experience for horror. Like you do not have to sit there horror and be like, nothing affects me. Like that's not what it's for. Like it should affect you.
It should affect you. It's supposed to invoke empathy and you like emotion.
You should hurt because the characters hurt. Like what are
but like in a safe space where that's not actively happening to you is the whole point.
And it can end. It ends.
You can turn it off eventually because it ends the movie.
But that being said, like it is not for everyone. I totally understand if someone's like, no, that's not for me. It's similar to like Baby Reindeer, where I'm like, it's brilliant. I think Baby Reindeer is one of the most brilliant pieces of media I've seen in a long time. I would love to strongly recommend it to everyone, but I'm like, check the trigger warnings. Check them, believe them when they show up on the screen, and do not do that to yourself if it is not something that you're
safe.
So this is one of those where like bodies. I'll force anybody to watch it because I'm like,
it was silly.
You're fine. Yeah. You're gonna this one, no, I would not do that to someone unless they were like game.
Ready,
so let's talk about seance parties. In Talk to Me, a paranormal seance becomes a party. And this is not unlike the literal seance parties of like the 19th century when wealthy people would hold these ceremonies in their luxurious sitting rooms. Communing with the dead has always been in vogue. We talked about it in our haunted homes episode.
Yeah, I remember that.
It really was a thing. It was like it was a fashion time where people would come together, and that was like they would have the people sitting around and they do a seance, and it was a fanfare, it was a show, and so it's always been something like this idea of partying around something as gruesome and horrible as death, right, is not on like this isn't the first time that's happened, right?
I mean they sell the Ouija boards at Barnes and Noble, you know what I mean?
It's made by like the company that makes Monopoly. Barbie has a Ouija board, like whatever. Death has always been in vogue, like talking to them and making a whole scene about it, so it's not new, right? For this latest generation, the acknowledged connection to the other side doesn't result in news coverage, fanfare, or anything remotely newsworthy. It becomes a viral party trick, which honestly I found really funny. It's like, this is brilliant. This is exactly how Gen Z would handle it. Because consider how Gen X or even millennials have dealt with the supernatural in films like The Poltergeist, The Exorcist, or The Ring, right?
Even Ouija.
Even the Ouija. Yeah, all the Ouija board, Ouija films, like it's always been with a strong, healthy fear and respect. Like sometimes you get people who are like messing around, but there is like once it starts amping up, once it's confirmed that there is another side and there are forces over there, there's like, okay.
Yeah, no, we get it. Hands off. Absolutely. Burn that thing.
How do we
Burn
stop
that thing,
this?
Get rid of it. Yeah.
How do we stop this from continuing to happen? Because that's bad, right? In contrast, when Gen Z is handed a tool to commune with the afterlife and confirms its reality, they turn it into a source of entertainment, making fun group chat videos and throwing parties with all their closest and least favorite friends.
Don't go to Appalachia, Gen Z, you know?
Yeah. I say that the least favorite because I forget their name. Who's the non-binary character? What's their name? Haley. They hate Mia. As soon as Mia comes in, they're like, oh, seriously, like you just ruined my whole day. But they let them there and they let them do it again. And so I was like, yeah, it's such a young person thing to happen.
Yeah.
This reaction, I think, is quintessentially Gen Z, and I find it delightful, right? While millennials might be nihilistic and depressed, asking for the end politely. Like, please take me away.
Yeah.
Being desensitized to danger, Gen Z approaches the supernatural with a mix of sleep deprived delirium and constant giggling, as if you were at a late night sleepover. Like, you ever been to those where like you get to that point where you should have slept and now it's like too late and now everything is so funny, like you're kind of hot, right?
Yeah.
That's what they were doing. Like, that's what this was. Like, I think it's so like for me, I think it's like millennials are right before bedtime, like right before we should be sleeping. Like, we're tired and you get to that point where you're like, I'm so done. I don't want to do this anymore. Gen Z is the delirium after that. Like, we've gone past, we're sad and depressed, and now they're in, fuck it.
We have to exist in this life, crazy,
right? Fuck it.
Life, we're here.
This is whatever. This is what we given. It doesn't matter. And millennials are like, good for you. Good.
Yeah, we wanted that for you. Go live.
Woo. Yeah. So that's how I feel. That's what my interpretation of Gen Z is they are the delirium of a late night sleepover. So they don't exhibit the indifference that we have, but rather a taunting dismissal of the fears they're supposed to have, laughing in the face of supernatural threats. So it's not that healthy respect and fear. It is whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I've seen worse. Whatever. Life sucks.
Life
Why would I be scared of the death?
There's no future.
Yeah.
What do you want? So the montage in this film is one of my favorite cinematic moments. The music, the performances, the camera movement, everything about it is fun and dangerous, just like this hand. Like that song gets stuck in my head, and like they do the movement, which is like so TikTok. Remember there's like a whole time of TikTok where they did like you were at one side and then you turn and you do that and then you'd flip up and you'd be somebody else. Like that. And it's also like in that moment, like, so there's this montage of the party where now everybody's doing it. And this came after a really stressful moment where a very vulnerable person used the hand and it revealed some terrible things. And he experienced some really embarrassing things too. And they caught it on video, and of course they're not going to delete it. And and then it leads into this where it's like, all right, we pick up and we just do it and we're all doing it with each other. We're having fun. We're being silly. He does it again. Like there's like so much of that. There's like, she's singing French because she's possessed by a French person. Like there's so much of that is it's excitement. And it's such a like dancing with the devil moment of like they should be afraid. They had just experienced some like scary things, especially Mia having already gone over, and then it leads to some really terrible choices that cause some awful things to happen in the future. But that scene is just packed with so many things. Like it's really fun and it's also really scary, and I think it's one of the best parts of the film. And like in film history, it's up there with me. So I think
it sticks with you.
Yeah. I also just wanted to note, like, I love the fact that they share these videos through a group chats. Like that's really funny to me, because instead of making it a viral sensation or proving to the world that there are ghosts and that we can talk to them, they decide to just fuck around and play with them. Yeah. They're like, no, we're keeping this between us. Yeah. And the funny is that like the people who know you are going to do that. We don't want fame. We don't want people to know about it. This is our little secret.
Yeah, they'll take it away if they know.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just like, I love that. So the flippancy of this behavior, so the fact that they're just group chats, they're partying, all of that, those moments are revealed like throughout the film. And there's even like commentary on the severity of the harm in the film. But I think it's the strongest in the ending. I think the ending really reveals how heavy this is, and that this whole time we've been playing around, and even in the moments that are really scary and awful, it doesn't feel quite as hopeless as the ending makes it out to be. And I think it's a brilliant ending that ties it up and brings us back. And I think what it does is it shows the seriousness of what they were playing around with, because it shows us what was happening on the other side. So heavy on the spoilers, folks. This is your warning. This is spoiler town. I'm going to tell you the ending. So again, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you look at the trigger warnings or you're like, I can't do gore of any kind, don't watch it. Just listen to us.
Yeah.
You got it. So in the end, Mia dies. Right. And we get a brilliant close to the film that is just heavy. Right.
Yeah.
So still reeling from her almost murdering of Riley, Mia wanders the hospital until seeing that time is passing by incongruently to her own experience. Right. So she sees that Riley's getting better and then he's leaving the hospital. She sees her father in there and she sees him leave.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not he's even alive, we don't know. He could have
Yeah.
just passed on to the other side.
Yeah.
Eventually, the hospital fades away and she wanders towards, she ends up in darkness and she wanders towards a match being lit.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear it like, and then she follows the light and she finds an outstretched hand and she reaches for it, clasping, and is met with, I let you in. Right? Now, she is the spirit that is laughed at and mocked at, yearning for the brief moments of being tied to the other side. Right? So for all the fun that she had, she's now the horrifying cost of this party trick.
Yeah.
So these are real people who've died and are trapped here. So like that, I really love the symmetry of that. Like this whole time, like that is what the other side is seeing. That is the brief moment that they get to reconnect to the world and to be laughed at. Cause now there's a party of people looking at her.
Yeah.
So she never escapes it. Like even the moments that she gets to be with them.
Yeah, are so fleeting.
It's fleeting. It's 90 seconds and it's a joke the whole time.
Yeah.
So
it's not, she doesn't get to be her for 90 seconds. She just gets to be the laughing situation of this party. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can understand like the desperation that someone might have to see weakness in someone and prey upon that to get more time and to get someone else, like to punish someone and have them come here too. Like, it's just like, it's such a sobering moment, I think, for something that they were taking lightly the whole time. So, what I really wanted to cover in this section, and then I'll be done, is the addiction to the supernatural, or just addiction as a theme in this film.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of other things that are being at play that you can absolutely interpret is really happening in the film, because, you know, ghosts don't always mean ghosts. Ghosts don't mean just ghosts ever. Yeah. Right? A haunting is never just a haunting. It always means something. And one of the many aspects of the film that I appreciated was its approach to addiction metaphors and just creating a narrative around addiction in a way that I felt wasn't
heavy-handed.
Yeah, it wasn't heavy-handed. It wasn't lecturing. It wasn't pitying. It felt very real, right? So clearly the party trick acts as a stand-in for drugs. There's a lot of reasons, right? So they tie the kids to the chair with a warning, trust me, you'll want it to be tight. And it's like, what are they using in these ropes? Like the bliss and euphoria they experience, coupled with a release of inhibitions that lets them speak their truth and act foolishly.
Which, big thing for Gen Z, who's always having to perform being themselves and not ever getting to be themselves. They're given a moment of lack of accountability.
Yeah.
They're given a moment to just be silly, whatever, for the first time.
And we see that with in Bodies, right? Like their addictions were because they can't be themselves. They need an excuse. They need to be able to point at something and be like, no, it wasn't me. That was that. Yeah. No, I wouldn't ever think that or feel that.
This is a stand-in for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And having that release creates this intense desire to do it just one more time, despite the pain and discomfort that follows. Like you just, that high is outmatched, right? So they don't fully understand what happens when they're under, only the exhilarating feeling of being possessed, right? Yeah. So they might see the video footage of them acting a fool, but honestly, they're like, I felt cool that whole time. So the 90-second rule mirrors this concept of overdosing and other real world precautions in drug use, right? Like of going over, using things too much. Like there's a make-believe like limit, right? That because drugs affect everyone differently. And so, but there is this like, don't do that and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
And
but
Mia
yeah.
goes over the 90-second limit, letting the spirits in or simply getting addicted to the thrill. Like,
Yeah.
she went too far and now she needs it, right? But I think the biggest thing is like the solution to Riley's possession and self-harm is rehab, right? Is to simply stop doing it and let his young body heal.
Yeah.
Because once he stops doing it in the hospital, he's starting to heal.
Yeah.
He is getting better. But he experiences, albeit more intense and dramatic because it's a film, withdrawals during the recovery period. Like he's got all kinds of fevers and other things that are and he needs
self-harm.
He needs it, right?
Yeah.
So he's hurting himself. But I think even more significant than those blatant symbols is the reaction and stigma surrounding the use of the hand, and specifically Mia's use of the hand. So there is a strong judgment towards Mia when Riley gets hurt. First of all, from like the mother who accuses her of doing drugs and making remarks that imply that she knows Mia has a history with it, and like having this predisposed judgment of her for that. Like I expect, like it lingers around Mia, marking her as untrustworthy because she's done it before.
Yeah.
So you've just been written off for history.
Yeah. And I also wonder, like, I don't know if this is what it was, but like that's kind of how her mom died. So like, was it also a dig at that? Like, I don't know. It felt really rude. It felt super inappropriate and rude how the mom reacted. And like, that's kind of how like biases matter. Mia's race and gender in this mattered. The fact that the mom was a white woman mattered. She was like really not okay with how she reacted to Mia. And it definitely came through.
Yeah. Like even like there's little digs that she has where Mia exclaims like, I did weed once. I tried weed once. And it's playful, but it's like, why did you direct that at her and not your own kids in that way?
Yeah. Like why are your kids under different standards for your self-judgment?
Yeah. It's super there. And and again, because it's like, oh, you've done weed once or whatever it is that she might have done in the past. Now it's like, of course you would do it again. And of course you would put my kid in harm's way because you are less of a person because of this interaction you've had in a previous time.
Yeah. You're an outsider too. Like you're found family, but you're not really family. There's a line to the family.
Yeah. I can release you, like, although she's also very upset with her daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, her stress, I get it. It just brought a lot of things to light. The older brother of the boy who died at the beginning of the film, who had the hand in the beginning, and that's where they got the hand from now, is shocked to hear that they let a middle school boy use the hand. He's like, he's absolutely judgmental about them because if this was just a seance or whatever, like why would they have been so hard up for him using that hand?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's still like Poltergeist had that child talking to them in the TV. Okay, they're here. Like, and while for the other teens, the hand brings joy and is used as a party only activity, Mia takes it home and continues the connection outside of social interactions.
Yes.
Right? So for the others, the thrill lies in connecting with spirits and playing along with friends. This is just a party us. We do cocaine in the bathroom at the party, and then we go home and we have a regular life. For Mia, it is an escape and a way to connect with her lost mother. So it is something that is not connected to social activity. It is something to cope. And that is where it's crossing the line now of just party trick into danger. So for her, it quickly becomes more than a social kick. It becomes a crutch. And she uses it to deny her reality, the truth about her mother's suicide, her strained relationship with her father, the fragility of her found family, and her overall sense of being an outcast, because she ultimately is alone in all of this. Her father is also alone, and he breaks my heart because he does not get enough love.
Absolutely.
But it's like, in like the trauma of having to break down a door a second time for someone that you love that's on the other side hurting themselves. Like, no, like, it's unfair. It's really unfair. I think he deserves a lot more. But I think that representation of her having it in her bag and taking it home and trying to keep doing it outside of the social gathering is where I'm like, this is addiction now.
For addiction.
And understanding that the hand is her addiction, evolving past her desperation to save Riley, makes the ending hit significantly harder because it's very desperate. So if we strip away the fun, terrifying supernatural elements, we honestly get a story that's very similar to Requiem for a Dream. right? We get a young woman abandoned by her mother who resorts to drugs, ultimately leading to her demise. We just get a cautionary tale about drug use.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, because it's beautifully done. And Requiem for a Dream is also beautifully done and traumatic. And it's all kinds of drugs, right? But that's what I mean. Like, this has this fun, like, horror thing over it, but it is just a film about addiction, and it's heartbreaking, right? And it's something that really shows like the horrors of that journey. And it offers us laughter, discomfort, and excitement that quickly descends into chaos, pain, and tragedy. And I do want to note that not all addiction journeys end like Mia's, or even depression stories like her mother. There is hope and there is a way out. It is a constant, lifelong battle, but it does get easier. It's just, you have to get it there. You have to want it to get easier. And know that the people who love you would rather hold your hand in real life than an embalmed one to get 90 seconds with you. You know, that's not always easy to see or understand when you can hear the water flowing from the other side. It is very tempting when you are given this outlet and this option to leave something that it feels like you're already suffocating in regular days. When the bliss of being somewhere else feels so much better than the darkness here, right? But there is a way out. And one day you won't need that hand to connect to people here and gone, to yourself or to your potential. Yeah. You can just do that. And so I think I just, like, as much as I loved it, and it is such a bleak, awful ending, right? I was really thankful for the fact that it was an honest portrayal, but I also was like, I hope people don't feel like that's like
the end.
The end for them.
That's inevitable. Yeah.
And it's not. It really isn't. And it's just like, this has just happened to be what her story was. Because I also appreciate when things end badly. I think sometimes we got to show that. But ultimately, Talk to Me brilliantly humanizes the real horrors of addiction, grief, and loss that shadow these characters. Its story and cinematography are exceptional, making it one of my favorite films and definitely on the top 10 list of horror movies. I was going to say 5, but I was like, I got to think about that. And I really appreciate Gen C's flippant attitude towards the supernatural. I deeply cared for Mia, and I felt the pain of watching the gruesome events unfold. It is certainly not a film for everyone, but it was definitely a film for me.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, like, I thought the end was so purposeful. Like, there's lots of times where you have something tragic happen. You're like, oh, you didn't need to do it that way. This needed to end that way because it was, like, very much a representation of what can happen, and it's something that's deeply stigmatized and not talked about enough. Like, the path to prevention is acknowledging it exists and that the people feel that way and that that's okay and that you need to look at it. Like, and the entire film was everyone not looking at it. Like, and literally, just leaving her alone. Leaving her alone. And that's how you have that ending. So it needed to be portrayed how it was. So I'm going to get into that, I think, in like the second half, but like, that is like a big thing, and it needed to end that way. It was so impactful. It was just rough to watch. And as you said, it's not for it. But I also think, like, I think more people would like it than not. Like, I equate it to how I feel about Oreos, and we'll talk. I know that sounds very silly, but as I said, this film was a rough watch for me, not because of the quality of the content. It was amazing. It was amazing, especially after hearing you talk about it. I was like, no, yeah, even really just thinking about it, like, it was a great film. It was unique. It was well shot. It was creative. It was something I hadn't seen before. But it was hard to watch. And even the second time around, I realized, like, literally a day or so ago, why. And that's because that's how trauma works. Where you get activated by something, you're like, oh, why do I feel like why do I feel like this? Ew. What is get it out. And you don't really understand why at the time. Like, sometimes, like, some people are like really in touch with their emotions. I hope to get there one day. But most of the time I'll get activated with something and be like, I really wish I could understand why that happened. And then a few days later I'll process it and I'll really think about it. I'll be like, oh, that's why. It's kind of. And I felt about this film, as I said, how I feel about eating Oreos. I don't enjoy eating Oreos. I like how they taste. I don't enjoy eating them because of the texture. And I think they taste good and people really love them. But for whatever reason, the texture makes my body feel weird. And So I don't like eating them, but I recognize that that is a unique experience for the most part and a reaction from my body, and not because there's anything wrong with Oreos.
Gotcha. I see.
You know, there's nothing wrong with this film. It's a great movie, but I wanted to crawl out of my skin multiple times.
Which,
while
you know,
watching
is
the movie.
accurate. I feel like that's what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, and it's necessary because, like, honestly, it made me think about a lot of stuff, and it's like I thought it was very purposeful, even though it was uncomfortable. It was very sometimes you have to feel uncomfortable. That's like how change happens, and that's the thesis of my section, is that like sometimes you got to look at the thing that hurts. Sometimes you got to look at the thing that's very uncomfortable, because that is like the only way to really know what you're dealing with and to heal from it and to deal with it authentically. You can't fight a threat. You don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you need to know what you're dealing with so that you have the tools and the support and the structure in place to deal with it. And if you never look at it or talk about it, you're never going to have that. So that's why this film matters and is really good. But there are scenes, as I said, I just couldn't watch twice. I literally, at one point, I just got up and I was like, weren't you watching a movie? And I was like, yeah, it's still going. I'll go back in when I know it's done, when I know this part is done, because I remembered what it was. And it's because I empathize so heavily with Mia, as I was in her shoes at a similar age and handled that loss very similarly. Like, where Mia lost her mother, I lost my stepdad, and my way of coping was very similar. My attachment style was very similar. My self-isolation was very similar. The ending was different.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what's important, because I did have a handful of caring and supportive people that helped me get through that time. But like, it was like bar for bar outside of the psychotic break and injury to child, as well as like how it ended. That was pretty much similar. So if you trade out a ghost hand for alcohol, it's the same, as you said, it's a metaphor for addiction, you know?
Yep.
So
it's something to help you get through it.
Yeah. And it was hard to watch her fall. And it was hard, specifically extra, to watch the impacts of that fall on the people like she loved. You know what I mean? Like seeing the dad, seeing even like the brother, and being like, oh, this poor baby. Like, you know? So this film is deeply emotional on all fronts, and it covers heavy topics, which Gabe went over. And it just really focuses in on the unhealthy coping mechanisms, like especially isolated people can sometimes seek out because they don't have the support and structure in place, or even like the structures that they have, they don't know how to support them the right way. And that's not their fault necessarily, but we need to find a new way. And that's what I'm advocating for. This film, if it's a hard watch, it's a necessary watch. So Mia is grieving the loss of her mother and copes through this dangerous party game. She is described as needy and clinging, which when losing a loved one makes a lot of sense. When you realize the impermanence of life during a stage of life where you don't have a firm concept of time or the future, this can drastically affect and impact your attachment style. And like, if this is a movie about trauma and addiction, like they did it bar for bar, like it was really spot on into like what can happen if you don't look it in the eyes and say, hey, friend, I am worried about you. What are you feeling? How can I help? And it's just very common for the people around you, especially at that age, to not know how to help you through your grief. For other teens and peers who haven't experienced loss in this way, those emotions and that need for connection, that like desperation, can very much feel like a burden, or at the very least, like overwhelming, invasive, and stressful, like an attack to their situation. So when the boundaries that are pushed, you see it like throughout the film where Mia's pushing boundaries that are reasonable things to be upset about, but everyone feels really uncomfortable to mediate that conflict because of the heavy emotion behind them. They know they're dealing with loss. They don't know how to call it that, you know, and say like, hey, are you experiencing the same things that your mother may have been experiencing? Are you experiencing the same thoughts that your mother may be experiencing? And they don't even have all the context because they don't know what happened, because that's something that's hidden by the dad. So it's like there's just so much happening that makes this so complicated and so accurate.
She is failed by every person in her life, and absolutely she makes some terrible decisions. But I think like her father keeping that from her, and I get that he's trying to protect her, but that was like one of the most harmful parts of that, because she never got closure and she never got to fully understand. And because then you're left guessing. So she doesn't even get the letter that says this wasn't you. This
It
was
wasn't
just
your
something that
fault.
that
Yeah.
happened to me because of where I was, but it has no bearing on my love for you. And she was denied that reality to the point where she couldn't believe it anymore.
Yeah, she had to fill in the gaps, and her brain coped how it did. There was too much time in between the event and the closure of that notice, and it was just so rejected after that. So there's a few things I'm going to unpack in my section. One being the ways in which loss can impact the still developing brain. Trauma impacts, and the teen brain is unique. And there's still a lot of research being done around that that's like ever changing, just like there's still a lot of research being done about trauma that's ever changing. So I'm going to unpack a little bit of that. It's super interesting. And then second, how loss can impact a family structure, which we see play out like honestly very accurately in the film for probably a lot of the world, unfortunately. And why in loss, we may feel compelled to reach the other side quicker than those who have not yet experienced that. And when we don't call it what it is, how we might not even realize that's what we're doing until it's too late.
Yeah.
So the developing brain and the impact of loss. So Talk to Me centers on teenagers who are still in high school, not like Boys where they're in college. It's different, and that difference matters a lot. I think it's really important that they chose teenagers to work with as like the playground for this horrible situation, because the teenage brain is unique in that the way there's just a really unique way that teenage brains manage memory and time. And this is a big strength of the teens, in that they're adaptable to change and then more like any other age bracket, but it also can have really negative impacts when dealing with trauma without a strong support system. So in a pamphlet titled The Teen Brain Still Under Construction from the Behavioral Institute, they unpacked research around the developing teen brain, and they say genes, childhood experiences, and the environment in which a young person reaches adolescence all shape behavior. Adding to the complex picture, research is revealing how all these factors add in the context of a brain that is changing and with its own impact on behavior. A clue to the degree of change taking place in the teen brains comes from the studies in which scientists did brain scans of children as they grew from early childhood through age 20. And the scans revealed unexpectedly late changes in the volume of gray matter, which forms the thin folding outer layer of the cortex of the brain. The cortex is where the processing of thought and memory are based. And over the course of childhood, the volume of gray matter is in this cortex increases and then declines. A decline in the volume is normal at this age and is in fact a necessary part of maturation, essentially. So the assumption for many years had been that the volume of gray matter was the highest in very early childhood. You learn everything when you're a baby. You learn everything when you're a little kid. That's why you're so full of energy and you're go, go, go. And then it gradually fell as the child grew. But now recent research shows that a high point in the volume of gray matter occurs during early adolescence. While the details behind the changes in volume on scans are now not completely clear, the results push that the timeline of brain maturation into adolescence and into young adulthood. So essentially it pushes that timeline much further, where the teen brain is still doing so much changing. So in terms of the volume of gray matter seen in brain images, the brain does not begin to resemble that of an adult until the early 20s. And the scans also suggest that different parts of the cortex mature at different rates. So specifically, areas involved in more basic functions mature first. Those involved, for example, in the processing of information to form senses, control movement, etc. And the parts of the brain that are responsible for more top-down control, controlling impulses and planning ahead, the hallmarks of adult behavior, are among the last to mature. So that's why the early 20s is a mess. Forgive yourself, friends.
You were growing.
Yeah, you didn't have anything in your brain yet that's like, maybe I don't do that. You know what I mean? Like maybe that I don't do that thing.
Bad things.
Yeah, there's a future. You know what that is? I care about 10 years from now. Their brains don't know how to do that yet. And that's a strength and a weakness. It depends on the life that you're handed. It depends on where you're born and the situations with which you are experiencing. Because there's a way where that can be like really positively impactful if you have good friends and a strong social structure that like encourages you not to harm yourself. You know what I mean? So the heavy things that these teenagers are dealing with we're all impacting their brain's development, their relationships, and how they view themselves as being safe in the world. And while the brain is considered plastic in terms of the current trauma research, meaning it can heal from the impacts of trauma, trauma during such a crucial and tumultuous time in one's life can be especially damaging, especially when the adults around them are not present for them in the way that they need. And when peer groups aren't providing safe social outlets. The age brackets are more specifically because these age brackets, those teen years, are more likely to make riskier decisions when that is the social norm of their peers. So if you're having party friends and that's the expectation, you're more likely to binge drink, you're more likely to do drugs. Like, it's just because you don't have a concept of 10 years from now what that'll do to your body. It's like the kid who's sitting on the curb and he's like, how long do you think it takes till this gives me cancer, holding the cigarette?
Yeah.
Do you think it's right away or do you think it's later? So yeah, this age bracket is more likely to make riskier decisions, and they're also more likely to fall into situations that can mortally injure them. Like, statistically, more teenagers die than any other age demographic from like injury, like falling off of things, not making smart choices, essentially. And essentially, in many ways, the teens in the film did not have the brain capacity to fully understand the danger and the permanence of their actions. Given a different environment and with different supports, Mia may not have had this outcome / ending because, like, there are positives to this brain's adaptability and change. You can have this influence you positively. So in another article titled What Neuroscience Tells Us About the Teenage Brain on apa.org, they say the adolescent brain was long portrayed as broken, immature, or contributing to problematic behaviors. This was said by Eva Telzer, PhD in psychology of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And they continue and they say, but in the last 5 years, there's been a huge shift towards seeing the developing brain as malleable, flexible, and promoting many positive aspects of development and adolescence. They specifically list like instances of like, if their friend groups are activists, like being really into social change and like going to protests and shaping the world around them in like a positive way. Or it's like if their friends are really into like self-sustaining the world, you know, like it depends on like what their peer group is into. And like arguably, it seemed like Mia's peer group actually wasn't actively partying. They sought that out because of the trauma that they're experiencing. But I think the issue is that more people weren't watching them.
Yeah, I also think it's like, it's similar to Bodies, 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 where they were doing all those drugs in front of Sophie, even though she was in recovery. I think it was, they were doing all these dangerous things in front of Mia, who was very vulnerable. And no one was thinking about her, taking care of her.
Yeah. Especially, So the verdict when looking at this research and the way trauma overlaps with the developing teenage brain is that teens are deeply impacted by their peers and support systems. So when their support system is not present, or even when their support system is not authentically present, for example, Mia's support system not remembering their mom's death anniversary, as Gabe said, she was alone, and the impact of that. And then Mia's father retreating into himself and his own grief, and so not able to be there for her in the way that she needed as his child. Like, and that's not to fault him. People grieve differently, but they grieved in really conflicting ways. And it was just super damaging to her brain. So escape as a coping mechanism can be especially damaging for someone so vulnerable. So as you said, they were doing all the stuff around her, not considering how that would impact her. And like, I get it. Adults are just grown-up kids. It's hard to know everything to do. I'm just hoping that like if you watch this movie or if you've experienced something like this, you can learn and grow from it by like knowing that we need to talk about these things so that people have the tools that they need to survive and move past them. And essentially all these vulnerabilities just increase her risk factors for addiction and mental health issues, but these things aren't inevitable. So how loss can impact a family structure. Loss has a deep impact on the family structure as well, where sometimes the grieving process of one family member may act in harm to another loved one's coping process. Like me and my mom, totally different ways of grieving. Totally we're not compatible. And that's fine. It is what it is. You can't change it. Luckily, we came out the other side. But sometimes it is the parent's responsibility to like help navigate that. And if you don't know the skills, we need to seek out help, you know, therapy, other parental groups that are support systems. Like they all should have been talking more. And because it's so hard to unpack these subjects, it just kind of got buried. And that's where like the issue kind of lies. So what we see in this film is that Mia and her father grieve in conflicting ways, and that deeply damages their relationship. The loss of one parental figure is a quick way to parentify a child. That's also a thing that happens. Like, she really has to take care of herself and like self-isolates because he's needing to take the time he needs to grieve his wife and her mother, you know?
Yeah. And she clearly doesn't trust him.
Yeah, because there's a denial of that trust and him not given the whole story, you know? So the two grieved in isolation from each other, Mia needing to talk about it and needing the affection and connection from the experience, like needing to grieve together, needing like that connect. She was exhibiting like this need for connection with all her other friend groups because she wasn't getting that from like the absence of her mother, but also her father. And Mia's father needing to just keep going. You know, some people just need to like go back to work after they lose somebody, you know, not everyone needs to talk about everything, but sometimes your coping mechanism might conflict with somebody else's. So the not talking about is what actually happened, was causing his heart and mind and struggling to accept it, you know. And it was also hard for a parent to know what's appropriate to tell the child, as you said, Gabe, like for the child's own good, like out of intended protection. Sometimes parents will withhold information that is essential to the healing process because they don't think they're old enough for it, or they just don't know how, they don't even have it like wrapped around in their own minds. So they don't know how to communicate it to someone younger than them. Like it's all well intended, but it just had so much harm. So unknowingly, this information can be the thing that the child needs to cope and heal. As you said, it's like the thing they needed for closure.
Yeah.
And it would have helped establish trust between the two of them. But the lack of clarity around the loss of Mia's mother and the feeling of deceit surrounding, like, she knew something was up and that he wasn't telling her. And that just made her immediately not trust anything that he would say.
Yeah.
It gave too much space for Mia's developing brain to fill in the blanks of that loss. Her mind actively floundering to cling to something that felt less awful. And it also impacted Mia's coping mechanism, seeking escapes from the information, as that was what was modeled to her. You know, her dad was escaping. So she's like, that's how we deal with hard things.
We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. We run away. And when years later presented with the truth of her mother's suicide, it was an attack against all of her emotional barriers that she had built up out of necessity to protect herself. And that's why she couldn't accept it. It was too late at that point.
And he was kind of using it as a weapon too.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I don't think he even noted, like, he didn't realize that was the problem, because when she was like, you're holding things back, then he was like, oh, wait, maybe I should tell you. And he was like, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. I don't know why I didn't. But it did feel like I have to do this because I'm losing you. And you finally told me that that's what you need. But it's a little too late.
And it's also like his coping mechanism was also just like an absence from what reminded him of his wife, which was her. And she needed him. And it's just, it hurts. It hurts. It's okay. And this isn't to fault the father, as I said, like, who was just grieving himself and doing the best he could. Like, I don't think he was doing any of this maliciously.
No.
This is the whole impact over intent thing, where sometimes just life happens how it happens and you're the villain in someone's story. It sucks. It sucks because the ending just hurts. But it's an example of how trauma can isolate a family. Like, this was perfectly done. How concealing the truth of a suicide can actually damage the grieving process of the child impacted and damage the connection of the remaining parent and child. If we don't look at the problem and call it what it is, we are creating a space for that problem to repeat, which is what happens in this film. We're removing the collaboration and support necessary for healing. We are removing the protective factors that can help a developing mind recognize the signs in their own body and mind that something isn't right. We're removing a safe space to convey that feeling to their loved ones. That's why when approaching suicidal ideation, an essential piece of preventing it is to call it out, name it, so that you can protect the people with those thoughts. Be like, hey, are you having suicidal thoughts? And if they are, that's okay.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you. Like, that life is hard. Like, logically, sometimes suicide does seem like the better choice when under capitalism and oppressive systems. But it's not the better choice when love comes into play. And you have to call that out. Like, sometimes life is hard for a period. and you just have to wait it out. And it's okay to feel that way. The most important thing is that you're not making a plan to act on it, and know that I am here for us to talk about this, and you are not too much, and you matter to me, and you not being here, I don't want to be in a world where you're not here anymore. You know what I mean? And that like that connection matters, and that I'm going to authentically show up for you. You don't have to deal with this by yourself. That's what you need to say in those situations.
Yeah.
And that's not what was said. And that's why these kind of things, like statistically, unfortunately, do perpetuate when you have that experience. It's like you need to unpack these emotions. You need to validate those feelings. And the reasons for having them, and to provide next steps that aren't not being here anymore. You know, it is to create a space where someone feels safe enough to tell you that they're having those thoughts, or even just unsafe thoughts in general, so that they can get the help they need to get through it. So not talking about the problem just allows it to grow like mold under the floorboards until the foundation of the person you love crumbles under the weight of life struggles. I thought that was pretty poetic.
It is. And sad.
And very sad. Yeah. So why in loss we may feel compelled to reach the other side quicker. So when dealing with the death of a parental figure, or just anyone, like dealing with loss, loss is hard, but especially like suicide, there are a lot of statistics that are pretty damning. I honestly don't encourage you to look at them. It's sad. To lose a parent to suicide drastically increases the chance of the child following the same path. It is something that, because of the fact that people don't talk about it, there's such a stigma. There's so much playing into that. There's similar statistics that exist for addiction and mental health issues. And my personal thoughts on this, I am biased. I will fully claim that I am biased. This is my personal thoughts as someone who was personally impacted by both of these things in my adolescence and my life. So like, I'm speaking personally from opinion. This is what I wished happened in the world, and would have hopefully, we can't change the past. Life happened how it did, but these are my personal thoughts on it. But because these things are so stigmatized, these things are in society, that we create a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. American society dehumanizes addicts so much that many addicts never seek help because of the perception around it. We label addiction by the end stages of it without recognizing the initial signs and stages that lead to it, to the point that some people who are exhibiting addictive traits don't even recognize that that's what they're doing until it's too late, till they're drinking at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. You know what I mean? They don't realize that when you take it out of the social situation, like Mia was doing with the hand, how quickly that can spiral out of control when it becomes a coping mechanism instead of a fun social thing you do with friends. It's different. Addiction looks different, and people don't really talk about it enough for people to recognize their own signs in their own bodies and lives. Like, there was a period of time where I was drinking a lot, and I didn't realize that that's what I was doing as a coping mechanism, and not because I was just having fun with friends. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just different, and we don't talk about it enough, essentially. So there is also the way that addiction is treated based on race and gender. There's a lot of ways that mental health and grief are even handled differently based on race and gender. So many families just don't speak about the addicts in their own families, removing their ability to help the next generation avoid the same fate. We're removing the ability, it's representation at the end of the day. We look to media for representation, so it helps us see who we are. If we don't have representation of healing or even the loss, we don't look at it for what it is. How do we know how to prevent it in the future? So the problem's hidden away, and the reminders of it are dismissed or deemed too much. And this doesn't solve the problem. It just allows it to grow, you know, creating unhealthy coping mechanisms, isolation, and escapes. And when dealing with loss, it is natural to miss the people you've lost and feel pulled to be with them again. And that's not talked enough about either. Like, generally, like, lots of people will experience loss and be like, we'll never talk about it again. Yeah. They didn't exist because it hurts. And that some people do need that for a time, but that can't be forever, is more so what I'm saying. Because the unfortunate reality is that sometimes this can be done unconscious or subconsciously too. As well, like when you don't have the context to name it, you're experiencing and dealing with, like, you don't have even the ability to recognize that that's what's going on with you. So what would have changed this film, and I'm going to try to link some resources in the blog for like addiction recovery and suicide prevention and stuff like that. But what Mia didn't have was the calling it out, the support systems. And these are all things that you can be in the world, friends, listeners. We can be that for each other. And it all starts with like looking at yourself and your history and being like, these are the things my family doesn't talk about. Why don't we talk about media literacy, but for your life, you know, self-analysis and like really unpacking like why and like how that's impacted you and like therapy, man, you know, and then like when you're offering to be there for someone to show up authentically, allow it. As I showed Gabe my water bottle earlier, and I'm going to show you guys because I don't like the good vibes only thing. The whole spectrum of the human emotions is what we need to experience with each other. And that's okay to not be okay. And we need to make space for that because that's the only way people are going to heal and actually authentically feel safe in the world. And yeah, there are lots of resources that exist. There are programs that exist. And we need to recognize like how addiction actually looks and how we can recover from it and how there's tons of people in the world who like, honestly, like the anonymousness of it, there's a whole program. It's Addicts Anonymous, it's Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, all those things, like it's all anonymous because no one wants to talk about it. And there's instances in which it's necessary to talk about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it really, there was a lot of that in this film. And that's what I really appreciated. I felt like it was doing both in a way that felt effective. I didn't feel like the horror movie aspect suffered because they were expressing some real life horrors. And I don't think the real life horrors were minimized in the face of horror. I don't think it was gratuitous. I don't think it was unkind or unrealistic or hurtful. Like I felt like it was really honest and it hurt to watch and feel connected to it. And it's, again, it can be very triggering, but I think it was beautifully done. I think it's a great horror film. It's stressful. It's got great cinematography and acting. The performances are out of this world. And it just like, it is really sad and it ends really sad. And I think just what's really important to note is that you like, if you're feeling similar, if you've experienced similar things, that your ending doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. It's not inevitable.
No.
It's not. It doesn't need to end that way. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, is wading through the water, treading water until the rescue boat comes or even there till you find land yourself, you know, and it's time matters. And it's hard when you're a teenager, and I get that because you don't have a concept of tomorrow. That's why this is so devastating to watch in this film. But you just got to make it. You just got to wait it out. And things do get better. As someone who previously did not want to be here and also struggled with addictive like things, it does get better. You eventually might want to be here.
Yeah.
I really didn't think I would, and I do, and that's crazy. I don't understand it. So I'm like, wow, I like being alive. What's that? I really didn't think I'd ever get to that. And you know, and you do, like lots of people do. There are lots of success stories if you wait out the bad feelings and you have the support that you need. And even if you don't, like just try to stay. Yeah. If you can.
Try to stay. That really is it. Yeah. And
it impacts people ultimately.
It was a series of unfortunate events that led to her demise. It was just a lot of bad things after bad thing and just nothing there to catch her. While she was also drowning. It wasn't just the ghost that was attached to her. So yeah, I think I hope that when you watched it, you felt something. And if you didn't see these things, then I hope like when you rewatch it, maybe there's a different appreciation or care for it, a different appreciation for Mia and her father and even Jade. Like, honestly, like she, like you don't always know what to do. And it's exhausting that, you know, you have to be the one person that's supposed to be taking care of this kid, who was while you're just trying to live your life.
Yeah, and you also like need your friend too. Like you don't want to be alone. You need that connection too. Like she wasn't.
It was like a one-way street.
Wrong. It was just like hard. It was a hard situation for a teenager to grapple with. Absolutely.
Yeah, and she had her own issues with her boyfriend. Yeah, she had a lot going on. Like she was just trying to be her life.
Yeah.
You know, everyone was trying to do that, and
Mm-hmm.
it just sucked that this is the way that it turned out. But I think it's a brilliant film. It is the last Gen Z film that we're covering for this section.
Yeah.
Next week, or next episode, because it won't be next week,
Mm-hmm.
will be Heathers. So we're going to be talking about a Gen X horror, and then we will be talking about a Gen Z horror that I found. I will say I do want to correct my call out. I still do want to hear from you all. But Kat had mentioned, and I forgot why we dismissed it, but Jennifer's Body is 100% the Gen Z horror that I was looking for, that's about the teenage experience.
You mean millennial, but yes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Millennial horror that I was looking for that talks about the teenage experience. We just have already covered it twice, so we weren't going to do
it
series.
again. No.
But it absolutely counts. I'm still on the fence on whether or not Ginger Snaps and The Craft count as millennial. I'd say they're more cuspers of Gen X to older millennial. I absolutely identify with those instances. I just think they're a little older. Whereas
it's like how
Body was right on the money.
We enjoyed watching New Girl, but it was a bunch of Gen X people in that show. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like we liked it. We related to a lot of it, but it was not it was not made with specifically millennials in mind.
Yeah, it wasn't my experience, which is So, just wanted to redact that Jennifer's Body counts, and if people were screaming Jennifer's Body at me, that is the answer. There, I'm sure, are more. I'd love to hear from you, but we are covering one, and it will not be Jennifer's Body, because again, we've already covered it twice. So, would love to hear from you. What did you think of Talk to Me? I don't know. Are you excited? What films do you want us to cover? And don't get married.
Let your kids, and hopefully your kids are just like okay, and that they feel loved, and you're there for them as best as you can be.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for everybody. It's hard for all of us.
Is hard.
Existence is hard, and it's okay. I'm so glad you're here. I'd rather talk to you, like hold your real hand, than this ghost one.
Agreed.